In keeping with the whole notion of the current state of education, from unwinding at the federal level to unwinding at the state level, and considering the fact that you would be superintendent, which means you're still going to be subject to either a Democratic or a Republican governor, how much authority, maneuverability, or whatever would you have to actually be able to impact some of these changes that we need to rise above 43rd?
That's a great question. I'm going to believe that we're going to have a Democratic governor after November 2026. While I breathe, I hope, right? Which will make things so much easier. I think it is hard to talk about what is happening at the federal level because it changes every day. They are effectively trying to dismantle the Federal Department of Education and doing a really good job of it. And so that has been, an added burden on schools because we don't know. Every day is something different. And so schools and districts and states have really had to sort of, just always constantly be prepared for what is coming down new or what is going away. And we don't really know on any given day what that looks like, which is very difficult to run school systems. So I'm just going to set the federal piece aside for a second. There are policies at our state level and at our district level that have been in place going back into the 19th century that are no longer valid, no longer helpful for today's students. And that's the piece that the Superintendent of Education does have control over. And so I talked about, during the 2022 campaign about, pulling a whiteboard, which, a chalkboard, now a whiteboard, now a clear touch panel, and making 3 columns. And what is the federal government control? What is the state government control? What is the Department of Ed control? And so starting at that Department of Ed level, what are the policies that we still abide by but are either no longer relevant or no longer helpful or no longer capable of helping our students move forward? And I can tell you there are a lot of those policies. We can talk about, attendance measurements. We can talk about school report cards. We can talk about textbooks. There's all of these things that the Department of Ed has direct control over. We can talk about recruiting and retaining teachers, teacher certifications, all of those things that can go ahead and pretty quickly be remedied to take off restrictions that are no longer relevant. We're talking about, we are in 2026 and we are still in very much a 1970s model of schooling, which no longer exists. And so we have got to move forward and get the Department of Ed and get our policies current with the world that we live in and the world that is coming that we don't even know what that's going to look like. I mean, you think about AI and how much it has changed just within the last 2 years, how it has changed almost everything, right? And how quickly that moves, and yet we're still looking at an educational model from when the internet didn't even exist. And so that's the piece I think keeps me so frustrated in the role of public education, because I see how we're not meeting the needs of our students. Because we're still stuck with these old policies, these antiquated ideas, when I was in school, this is how we did it, that no longer exist in our reality. I was talking to somebody the other day about textbooks, and I said, when I was in school back in the 19th century, you had your textbook for your knowledge, and then if that didn't have enough, you went to your library for more knowledge, right? Now, everybody has the whole world of knowledge right in their hand, and yet we are not doing a really great job of teaching students what to do with that knowledge and to understand what is true and what is opinion. And so, but because we're hindered by these policies at the Department of Ed level, at the state level, teachers aren't able to do what they need to do. And so that would be the first thing that I would work on is getting those Department of Ed policies up to date, pulling out the ones that are no longer helpful, pulling in ones, and you do that by bringing people to the table who know what needs to happen. And that is the other piece of it, is making sure that teachers have a seat at the table, all the way from early childhood up to 12th grade, and then moving forward using their expertise. And then the state piece of it is it's more of a sphere of influence. I wish that I had control over how much money I could give public education, because it would be $1 trillion. But I don't. But I can work to influence and talk about how we can improve outcomes for students if we're giving more funding. Sylvia is exactly right in the number of mandates that come down without the funding to support it. And so you leave teachers and schools hurting because there's no way for them to implement policies and laws. So that's sort of what I would do.